think haunted objects are just Hollywood fiction. The truth is far older, and it's locked away for a reason.
Think the most terrifying haunted objects exist only in Hollywood blockbusters like The Conjuring? Think again. What if I told you that everyday items, a seemingly innocent doll, a vintage teacup, or even a child's toy, could be gateways for genuine demonic entities? Prepare to have your perception of haunted possessions shattered as we delve into real, documented cases of objects harboring malevolent attachments. Welcome to the Conjuring Files, where we go beyond the screen to explore the blurred line between folklore, fear, and unexplained history. I'm your guide, and in this episode, #031, we're peeling back the curtain on one of the most chilling ideas in paranormal study, the haunted object. Now, let's be clear. Hollywood loves to show cursed dolls leaping off shelves or paintings screaming in the night. But real-world reports? They're far more subtle and, in some ways, far more unsettling. Unlike the jump scares of movies, actual cases often begin with small anomalies, a room growing inexplicably cold, repeated feelings of being watched, or objects found in places they were never left. Over time, these incidents escalate, not with theatrics, but with a quiet, persistent dread that lingers long after you've left the room. But not all haunted objects are the same. Experts often distinguish between two types: residual hauntings, like an emotional echo trapped in time, and what some call intelligent or attached presences, where an outside force appears to interact with the living. The latter is where things get controversial and deeply personal. In the coming minutes, we'll examine several lesser-known but well-documented artifacts, items once owned by ordinary people, now sealed away in private collections or locked behind glass. These aren't props from a film set. They're real objects tied to real reports, sleepless nights, unexplained illness, and in some cases, families begging investigators for help. And here's what makes them so disturbing. They look completely ordinary. No glowing eyes, no rattling chains, just a doll, a box, a painting, innocuous until they're not. So as we begin this journey, ask yourself, if you inherited an antique with no known history, would you keep it? Or would you wonder, what stories does it carry? What energy clings to its surface? Stick with us, because what you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's the unsettling intersection of human belief, historical mystery, and the enduring power of the unknown. Next, the story of a simple cloth doll and the 1970s apartment where it refused to stay still. You've seen the movies. You know the name. But the real story behind the doll that sparked global fascination didn't begin on a soundstage. It began in a quiet apartment in the 1970s, with two nursing students who never asked for any of this. They didn't buy a cursed object. They didn't dabble in the occult. They simply accepted a gift, a worn, handmade cloth doll, donated by a grieving mother. It seemed harmless, almost sweet. But within days, things changed. Notes appeared on parchment in handwriting that wasn't theirs. The doll was found in rooms it hadn't been left in, sometimes seated upright, facing the door as if waiting. One roommate woke to find it perched on her chest, though no one had touched it. These weren't one-time glitches. They were consistent, escalating, and deeply personal. Eventually, they reached out for help, not to filmmakers, but to a pair of well-known paranormal researchers of the era. After a thorough investigation, those researchers concluded this wasn't a case of imagination or prank. They believed the doll had become a focal point for something that wasn't human, an intelligence that mimicked affection to gain trust, then intensified its presence once that trust was given. Critics, of course, offer other explanations: psychological stress, sleep paralysis, even carbon monoxide poisoning. And fair enough, healthy skepticism is essential. But what's harder to dismiss is what happened next. The doll was removed from the apartment and placed in a secure, private collection. And ever since, it's remained sealed behind glass, never handled without gloves, never displayed without strict protocols. Even today, those who manage it refuse to speak its name aloud. not out of superstition, but out of respect for the consistent, unsettling pattern that began decades ago with two young women who just wanted a roommate. This wasn't about a monster under the bed. It was about an object that, by all accounts, behaved, watched, moved, and responded. And that's what makes it so unnerving. Because if a simple doll can become a vessel for something unexplained, what else in our homes might carry more than memories? Now, some say this case is unique, but it's not alone. Across the world, similar reports surface, always involving items tied to grief, trauma, or sudden death. Always involving owners who swear the object knew them. Which brings us to three artifacts so disturbing, their current locations are kept secret. Next, the box that made its owners violently ill, the painting that watches you back, and the child's portrait that seems to move in the corner of your eye. These aren't legends. They're documented cases, locked away for a reason. In 2001, a man bought an antique wine cabinet at an estate sale. Within weeks, he developed unexplained rashes, fatigue, and nightmares so severe he couldn't sleep. His wife fell ill next. Then their dog refused to enter the room where the cabinet sat. When they finally moved the piece out of their home, their symptoms vanished, almost overnight. They later learned the cabinet had once belonged to a woman who performed private rituals after the death of her child. They called it cursed. Investigators called it a case file. Then there's the portrait, painted in the mid-1800s, of a man with sunken eyes and a twisted expression. Every owner reports the same thing. At night, the figure appears to shift position. Not dramatically, just enough to make you question your eyes. One collector woke to find the painting turned toward the wall, though it had been bolted in place. He donated it the next day, insisting it never hang in a private home again. And perhaps most chilling is the painting titled simply "The Child in the Door." It shows a young boy standing before a glass-paneled door, a shadowy figure barely visible on the other side. Viewers consistently report feelings of dread, paranoia, and the unsettling sense that the boy is warning them, not inviting them in. In one case, a gallery had to remove it after multiple staff members experienced panic attacks while passing by. The artist? Unknown. The origin? Unclear. But the effect? Consistently, eerily the same. What ties these objects together isn't just strangeness, it's consistency. Across decades, across continents, people with no connection to one another describe nearly identical experiences: sudden illness, emotional distress, the feeling of being watched, and a deep, instinctive urge to get the object out of their space. No special effects, no jump scares, just a slow, creeping certainty that something about the item is wrong. Skeptics argue coincidence, suggest mass hysteria, or point to environmental causes. And again, critical thinking matters. But when the same patterns repeat with such precision, it forces a deeper question. Can objects absorb more than dust and time? Can they become anchors, not for ghosts, but for something far more focused, far more intentional? These artifacts weren't designed to terrify. They were ordinary once, but now they're kept under lock and key, not because they move, but because they affect. And that's the real horror, not the object itself, but what it does to the people around it. So how does something like this happen? How does a simple object become a magnet for fear, illness, or disturbance? Next, we explore the theories, the ancient beliefs, the psychological models, and the one idea that ties them all together: the moment an object stops being a thing and starts becoming a target. So how does an ordinary object, a doll, a box, a painting, become something people refuse to touch? According to folklore, history, and even some psychological theories, it starts with energy. Not in the supernatural sense, necessarily, but in the very real power of human emotion. Consider this: objects present during moments of extreme trauma, rage, or grief can become deeply associated with those feelings. In many cultures, it's believed that intense emotion can leave a kind of imprint, an echo that lingers long after the event. This is what some call residual energy. But there's another, more unsettling idea: that certain rituals, whether intentional or accidental, can invite something aware to attach itself to an object, not as a ghost of a person, but as an entity that uses the item as a doorway, a battery, or even a mask. Take the concept of sympathetic resonance. In physics, it's when one object begins to vibrate in response to another. Some paranormal researchers suggest a similar principle applies emotionally. If an object is repeatedly exposed to fear, pain, or obsession, it may begin to resonate with those states, amplifying them in anyone who owns it. It's not evil, it's not alive, but it's become a mirror for the darkest corners of human experience. And then there's curiosity, the most dangerous force of all. How many haunted objects end up in homes because someone thought it's just a story? Because they bought a doll at a flea market for its vintage charm? Because they hung a strange painting because it spoke to them? The irony is that the very act of bringing these items into your personal space, of touching, displaying, or even studying them, may be what activates their effect. Not because they're malicious, but because they respond to attention. That's why traditional cultures often have strict rules about handling objects from funerals, battlefields, or abandoned homes. It's not superstition, it's caution, a recognition that some things carry weight beyond their physical form. And that leads to the most important question. What do you do if you suspect you've brought something unsettling into your life? Next, we're not offering spells or exorcisms. Instead, we'll look at practical, grounded steps people have used across centuries, not to fight demons, but to restore peace. From simple cleansing rituals rooted in cultural tradition, to knowing when it's time to walk away, to recognizing the rare signs that mean it's time to seek serious help. Because the goal isn't to fear your belongings. It's to understand the silent stories they might carry, and when it's time to close the chapter. So what do you do if you suspect an object in your home is more than just old or unusual? First, and this is critical, don't panic. Most antiques, heirlooms, and secondhand finds are exactly what they appear to be: inanimate, harmless, and full of history, not horror. But if you're experiencing unexplained disturbances that seem tied to a specific item, there are thoughtful, grounded steps you can take. Many cultures practice forms of space clearing, not as magic, but as ritual reset. Burning sage, ringing bells, opening windows to let in fresh air, or even simply rearranging a room can help shift your mental and emotional state. These acts aren't about banishing demons. They're about reclaiming your sense of safety. And often, that's enough. Equally important is setting boundaries. If an object makes you uneasy, even if you can't explain why, listen to that instinct. Store it away. Donate it. Or, if it's historically valuable, consider placing it in a sealed display where it can be observed, not interacted with. Distance often dissolves the tension. But what if the feelings persist? What if you're experiencing sleep disruption, anxiety, or a sense that something is watching you, even after the object is gone? That's when it's time to look beyond the paranormal. Consult a therapist. Check your home for environmental issues like mold or carbon monoxide. Sometimes, the real world offers answers that feel far more comforting than ghosts ever could. And in rare cases, when multiple people report the same experiences, when physical symptoms appear without medical cause, and when no logical explanation fits, that's when some turn to trusted spiritual advisors or trained investigators. Not the kind who chase fame, but the kind who prioritize your well-being over sensationalism. Their role, ISN, T to confirm a haunting. It's to help you find peace, whatever the cause. Because at the heart of all these stories isn't fear of objects. It's the human need for control, understanding, and safety in our own spaces. And that's something we can all relate to. So whether you believe these objects are haunted, cursed, or just misunderstood, one thing remains true. The most powerful protection you have isn't a charm or a chant. It's awareness, it's respect, and it's knowing when to say, "This isn't mine to carry." If this deep dive into the hidden lives of haunted objects unsettled you, intrigued you, or made you glance at that antique on your shelf, do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the Conjuring Files, and share it with someone who loves a mystery grounded in real history. Every episode is crafted to explore the edge of the unknown, responsibly, thoughtfully, and without fear-mongering. And remember, The truth isn't always in Hollywood. It's in the files.